Hi everyone, this is Olga from SEO Sly. This is SEO podcast by SEO Sly. Today I have a very special guest. This is Lee Witcher. I know Lee mostly from, I kind of heard about him for the first time when I started watching SEO Fight Club, and kind of this was a very important time in my SEO career because my thinking changed a lot at that time from being a very purist white hat SEO to being someone who actually maybe has a more critical approach. And with that, I followed with that, and I even took part in Lee's course, a tested SEO training, which was like a total kind of breakthrough for me. And today I want to talk with Lee about his SEO story. I want to get to know more details, and I hope he will share some of the things he's doing, maybe a little bit more about SEO testing. So, Lee, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great too, and I'm really excited about this episode. So, can you briefly introduce yourself in case someone doesn't know you, because maybe there are still white hat people like I used to be who don't know you, but I'm not sure if there are such people, but in case, just in case.
Well, I don't consider, things white hat or black hat. I just consider things effective and non-effective. I started out, my background is in database marketing and direct marketing. So a lot of, analysis and testing type of things. And, as the internet developed, I tinkered around with SEO for about a decade. I would buy the courses and the software and all those kind of things, trying to say, hey, maybe this is the one that'll get me the rankings, that'll get me the Lambo or whatever. And, it wasn't working. And it never really occurred to me until the beginning of 2018 to take all the analytical and testing skills that I had and apply it to SEO. So I looked out there to see
Mm.
who was testing and, what sort of research was being done. And I decided to kind of look at all that, who was doing what, and test their stuff my way to see if it held up under, much more stringent conditions. So very quickly you find out who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. That's the beautiful thing about testing in general, is that you can put up pages, you can see what Google does, and determine for yourself what's true and what isn't true. So that's what I started in 2018, was just really doing a lot of analysis and testing, and that led me to appear on Fight Club, first as a guest, and then later on as a regular guest, and finally as a host on the show, one of the hosts on the show. And that's really where it's come from. I say I've been in SEO for 15 years, but it's really 5. It's 5 years of
Uh-huh.
tested data and 10 years of just messing around and listening to everybody else. So
Wow, because I remember those Fight Club episodes where you just were joining. Because like when I discovered SEO Fight Club, I think around 2 years ago or something, I kind of started from the beginning and watched all the episodes, and I
right.
remember those episodes where you started to appear. So, but can you tell me what was it that you were like professionally doing for those first 10 years? Was it like, were you employed somewhere? Did you have your own business those first 10 years when you weren't really doing SEO testing yet?
Yeah, I've had my own. I have a partner, and we've had our own database marketing firm. We worked together back in the 90s at a company, and then in 99 we teamed up. So we've been together for 24 years now, uh,
Mm-hmm.
doing that. I don't do a lot of that client work. Most of the clients that I have are gone, because I've shifted my focus over time to more internet marketing related stuff rather than client related stuff. So,
Uh-huh.
my day job was trying to figure out how to get you to give my clients your credit card number. It was all testing and stuff. And it was back in the day when, before we had a lot of the online capabilities that we have now. I mean, when Amazon first came out with, the people who bought this also like this type of thing. I mean, we were doing that the hard way. We were figuring out analytically, and then um, on websites, in catalogs, or in call centers, having people say, "Hey, Olga, that's a really nice, jacket that you're buying there. Have you seen, the blouse that goes with it?" No, well, let me, and it was just a way of getting upsells, based on what people's behaviors were like. So I was the nerd that was following all that data and, trying to test different things, for example, in a catalog environment, if you're trying to sell a shirt, do you sell
Mm-hmm.
one shirt, just a picture of the shirt? Do you sell like 5 shirts of different colors kind of laid out on a table? Do you sell a shirt, on a model? How many colors do you have off to the side and those sort of things? Do you sell it at, 19.99, 24.99, 29.99? Where do you get
Mm-hmm.
the best return? So my job was basically figuring out all of these things, dangling all of these carrots in front of consumers and seeing which ones they bid on, and then using that to optimize the profitability of my clients' businesses. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it nicely ties into SEO.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the skills were there. It's just they hadn't been applied to the search engines. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it never occurred to me to do that. And then I kind of got the idea, and I kind of saw some things that were out there, and I thought, man, there's really not a lot of people doing this. There's advantage in doing this here in this industry. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's
Okay.
kind of where
Okay.
it dovetailed. So by day, during those years, by day, I was taking care of my clients. And in the afternoons and through the night, I was just, launching all sorts of tests or analyzing data on the SERPs to see what I could pull back and what I could see was working and wasn't working.
Okay. So can you talk about your beginnings with SEO testing? Like, what did you start with? Do you remember what was the first test about?
I don't remember what the first test was about, but it was replicating some of the stuff that other people were doing. Kyle Roof was doing, he was with SIA at the time, and there were a couple other people that had their tests published. And so I just started grabbing some of those tests and replicating them to see, does a keyword in an H2 matter? Does a bold tag over here matter? These sort of very basic tests,
Mm-hmm.
and to try to validate what other people had published, whether it worked or didn't work. And a lot of times you found that what people had published didn't work, and there were some people that did more rigorous testing. They would run their test multiple times so they had a better result and it held up. So once I figured out there were a couple of sources of tests that held up, then I just started testing the factors against each other. So you
Oh.
would have, when you do a test, standard or the old style of SEO testing, you'd say, all right, does bolding a keyword work? Does it boost? And you can find out that it boosts, but it tells you that it boosts versus a control. It doesn't tell you how powerful it is, only that it beat, not bolding the.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start testing like keyword in an H2 versus in a bold tag, keyword in an H1 versus in an H2 and H3s, these sort of tests where you're putting them up to see which factors are stronger when compared to each other rather than to a control. So, I mean, that's where it all started, was just those
Mm-hmm.
sort of things, trying to figure out what's the strongest factors that people had already tested and figured out.
Mm-hmm. And can you share some of the maybe most surprising tests you had at that time, kind of the aha moments?
You
Then,
know, yeah, I was going to say the aha moments didn't really come from those because, you start
uh-huh.
to think about um, a keyword in a title. It makes sense that that would be important. A keyword in an H1 being more important than an H2, that makes
Yeah.
sense that it would be important because, it's sort of the hierarchy of a page. But there were other things that we began to test that were just fun. And, when you start to connect with other testers, you get ideas about a variety of things to do. So I remember there was an argument about whether or not stop words mattered,
Mm-hmm.
a and all these sort of things. So if you have, the best Seattle plumber, does it just truncate down to best Seattle plumber, or does it look at the, at all? And
Mm-hmm.
so how does Google treat stop words? And so we came up with this test idea that I ran, which was the article that I wrote was written entirely in stop words except for the keywords that were in there. So if
Mm-hmm.
Google ignored stop words, all that would be left was the 5 times the keyword is mentioned, so you'd have duplicate content. If all the stop words are just stripped out, all you have left is the keywords, and those are duplicate pages, on a site. So it wouldn't, it would only show one. Well, it showed all of them, we kept showing that over and over again. So Google doesn't ignore stop words. It may treat them differently, but it didn't ignore them. And so it was just starting to get, creative about some of the theories that people had. How can you run a test to, determine whether or not there's any truth in it or not? So from a test like that, we determined that A, Google can't, doesn't really do anything with stop words that we can detect, doesn't ignore them. And B, it was another one of those Google can't read, because the entire article was, a and the stop word, just a, a and the keyword, and a, and it didn't mean anything. There were more stop words than that, but basically the whole article was gibberish, and it got indexed and it ranked for its keyword. So.
Awesome. I'm not sure if it was you. Ted mentioned that on SEO Fight Club one time. Was it you who added, I think, a couple of hundreds of thousands of words into the title tag?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
how did it work out?
It read all of them. This thing is, we started off with a very simple test, which we talked about on Fight Club. How many keywords can a page rank for? Because you hear the idea, you optimize a page for one keyword, or you optimize it for hundreds of keywords, or what's the truth? So we just wanted to see what's the maximum number of keywords we could get a page rank for. So I did a 1,000,000-word blog post. And we just had a program just generate 1,000,000 random gibberish words. So they were just unique character strings. And we put them together, and we find out a few things, like WordPress does not like it when you try to paste in 1,000,000 words. So we had to break it up into 200,000 word chunks to even get WordPress to accept it. And then tracking it was fun. Ted had to build a little custom script to track the keywords to sample. And what we found was the first 200,000 words indexed. The ones below that didn't. So there's a size limit, on what Google will crawl and index on a page. So we figured that out. And, that's a lot larger than even, skyscraper content. 10, 15,000 words was nowhere near the 200,000 that, we were getting indexed. But what it means is that there was no practical limit for the amount of words a page could rank for. It wasn't like Google would sit there and you can rank for 500, but no more. You can rank for as many as, Google deems topically relevant. And so, that was kind of a cornerstone on some of the other research that, that we did on, topics of pages and things like that.
Can you talk a little bit about this other research you did, some other experiments?
Yeah, the Ted was looking. He had reached out to the community and said, show me pages that are ranking for, a ton of terms. And so people volunteered those things, and he was able to find some, and he shared some of them on Fight Club episodes. Like if you're ranking for, let's say, hummingbird feeder, right? You can rank for, there's hundreds of terms around that. We had a page that, I don't know, had like 12 or 1,300 keywords that it ranked for, but it was variations around hummingbird feeder and hummingbird feed. So you have a hummingbird feeder, and you have a nectar, which is basically sugar water, but then there's different recipes for it and different things, and there's different styles of hummingbird feeders and different materials that you make hummingbird feeders. So the one page that we were looking at, the site that we were looking at, the page that was ranking for just a ton of these things, because it was optimized well for the base term hummingbird feeder. So that's what we found is, pages that rank for just tons and tons of keywords are optimized for just a core root word, like hummingbird feeder in this particular case. So you don't do that. You can't rank for like hummingbird feeder and, car tires. It's just not going to, those two aren't topically similar enough. You're not going to rank if you try to mix topics on a page. But if a single topic has a lot of keywords associated with it, then yeah, you can rank for a lot.
And did your test show that, for example, you can rank for hummingbird feeder like on the first position, and all those other related maybe topics? Can you also be like very, very high, or usually it is just one theme that you are ranking like dominating and others are kind of lower?
Some are, I mean, a little bit lower because as you start to get to the longer tails, there's always an
Yeah,
element of exact match.
yeah.
So, red hummingbird feeder, you might rank on page 2 because you mentioned the word red somewhere on the page, but other pages are optimized for, red hummingbird feeder, blue
Mm-hmm.
hummingbird feeder, whatever. They're going to beat you out. But, you're still in the running. And if you tweak it around a little bit, you can probably, boost some of those terms up. But when you start to boost some long tails up, you'll take other ones down. So there's, you can't rank number one for probably for 1,000 different keywords, for a single page, but you can rank well for, a lot of keywords.
And when did you start using Cora? Because I think Cora is kind of probably the best tool you can have if you
It
do
is.
SEO testing. So, like, how did it all the two blend together?
Well, in 2018, when I started doing the testing, and I started testing factors against each other, August 1st of that year, Google sort of unleashed the AI. That update was just, it changed a lot of the way Google was processing stuff. So volatility in the SERPs went way high. And
Mm-hmm.
to give you an idea, back then, if we were doing a simple test, it might take 6 to 8 weeks to get a result, to get a clean result from it. But Google was changing the SERPs, significantly about every 2 weeks. So by the time we had an answer, the question had changed like 3 or 4 times. And so, it wasn't
Uh-huh.
working. So we started looking at new testing methodologies and, sort of how to deal with this volatility. And at that time, I bought Cora because Cora was gathering about 800 factors worth of data, which is more than anything else out there by, a lot. And I wanted to see if I could use that data to maybe build a model of the SERP, so I could figure out, what are the strongest factors using some, statistical tools and things like that. So I started playing around with that, and that led me to start talking with, Ted about a variety of things, and one thing led to another. Sort of, that's how that went.
So, are you the author of some of the ranking factors that are in Cora right now? I think now there are like more than 1,100. Am I
Yeah,
correct? 100,000.
yeah. The current version of Cora, the old versions, Ted would program in, like a keyword in an H2. So that would be a factor, number of keywords in it. That would be a factor. You'd have to hard code them. Now he's built an architecture where it crawls pages and discovers factors. So because it
Okay.
discovers factors, it's exploded out um, the number of things. So I think he said in his core database, there's over 100 and some odd thousand discovered factors in there now, or potential factors. They're not all ranking factors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Back in the day, when I was first doing some things with like factor diversity, I showed Ted some of the stuff that I was doing, and that got coded into Cora. So the factor diversity factors are typically the number 1, 2, and 3 factors in any Cora report in the shared data. And over time, as we find different things, they get coded into Cora. So if we find um, for example, the LSI terms in, H123, if we say, there looks like there's something there, he'll code it into Cora so that we can, measure it and test it and all of those sort of things. He's very good about responding to data. So anything that we do and find that we think would be best suited to Cora pulling that data, we share it with Ted, and he codes it in, and the users get the benefit from all that.
But I have to say it, even though this is not what I think now, but Google ignores LSI keywords. LSI keywords do not work. Like, what are you talking about? Can you briefly talk about LSI and how
I
you view them?
I let what we know is that if, and this is tested and this is in the field, if I grab topically related terms and I add them to a page, I can consistently improve the rankings of the page. Versus if I add stop words to the page, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that those things are there. Now, people get hung up on the term keywords and entities
Yeah.
and LSI. They're all basically just nouns. They're all entities at the end of the day. And they have, topics are basically a collection of entities. The example I always use is if I say to you, apples, butter, sugar, cinnamon, bake, pretty soon you're going to figure out that I'm talking about apple pie. And, whether we classify those as entities or LSI or keywords or whatever you want to call them, that group of words forms a topic. And that's how Google reads pages. So we can argue, about what the terms are and what to call them and everything else, but they work. And that's really all I care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is also something I have personally tested, even though before I also doubted LSI keywords, and this is exactly as you're saying. So, can you describe some of the, I don't know, top SEO factors that you found over the years, over your test, to be like the top ones, which kind of are work for the majority of keywords types of websites? Which ones are these?
Yeah, the keywords are, the driver of it in all the SERPs, including Google. People still think that, with all the focus on entities, which are very important and things like that, the keyword is the primary driver of the page. So, and there are zones on a page that are more important. And there's been just lots of testers that have shown you that keyword in the URL, keyword in the title tag, keyword in an H1, all of these are important zones that Google pays extra attention to. So to the degree that you can get those there, they're great. Also, just getting the keyword and variants of the keyword in your content, in the HTML, works really, really well. A lot of people still have that fear, if I add my keyword, 2 or 3 more times, Google will see it as spammy or whatever. But if you have a tool like Cora, you can take a look and see what people are doing on page 1. So there's this old rule that you still hear from time to time that your keyword density shouldn't be above 2% or
Yeah.
you're spammy. And if you look at most SERPs, everybody on page 1 is well above 2%. So they're not getting penalized, they're getting rewarded for it. In testing, we've tested up to 95% keyword
Oh.
density. And it works and it ranks. So, it's not going to do it for an active term. I can't just throw apple pie on a page 10,000 times and have it rank because it's not complete. There's other entities, there's other things that are missing. So other pages outrank it, but it's still there. You still see the number of times that, the density of apple pie in your page will correlate strongly with rankings. And generally you can move your rankings up by adding your keyword and variations more times. So people talk themselves out of those sort of things. So if you're looking at those top zones and you're looking at your keywords and variations, not new, but still SEOs, white hat and black hat, tend to forget or overlook
Mm-hmm.
that, which is why I like, something like Cora, because you can take a measurement and see where am I? Oh, I'm at, 4%. Everybody else is 6 to 8%. I'm losing, so you can adjust
Mm-hmm.
the page accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And can you share like some of the tests you are working on right now? Is there something you want to specifically test now with all those changes in Google, helpful content, those types of things?
It's interesting. The helpful content stuff, my position right now is we're not sure what helpful content is or isn't. Google has been vague. SEOs are out there hypothesizing about what it may be because we see changes and we're trying to say, is this helpful content? And is this how it works? And let me go find some other examples of this to see if it also got, boosted or demoted for it. And it's really hard. There's not a lot of data right now. There's way more theories than there are data. So I'm not sure what helpful content is or isn't, or whether it's in play or how it's in play.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what I see right now is that the same ranking methodologies and ranking factors that existed prior to helpful content are still driving the SERP. So largely I ignore the conversations about helpful content until somebody comes up with, some actual data that says, hey, here's something that we're seeing that's different than history. The tests that I do, a lot of the tests that I'm doing right now are sort of hidden because they are looking at fundamental forces.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be we would test things like, does a keyword here, does it matter? Now we're looking more at Google as a system. So, for example, if you look at how Google processes an image, we know that Google, if you show it a picture of the Eiffel Tower, it can say that's an Eiffel Tower and it's in Paris. And some of the stuff that they're showing with the new Gemini is really, really good at some of those image recognition. I'm
Uh-huh.
looking forward to that coming out and playing with that. But it can also read text on an image. It can also read EXIF data in an image. All of those things are processed at different times. So you'll see that EXIF data is processed, maybe quarterly, and
Mm-hmm.
OCR stuff is processed monthly, and other image stuff is processed, every 6 weeks, or, just intermittently. And so it's just understanding that, because if you see stuff that Google processes real time, it's more important than stuff that it'll process once a month or once a quarter. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to figure out those parts of the system. Looking at what the crawlers are doing when they come to the, what pages they visit and what elements they pull, and sort of what does it all mean? As of this time, you have mobile crawlers and you have desktop crawlers. Even the best people can't tell you really fundamentally what the difference is between the two of them. What are they doing? Why does Google need
Uh-huh.
two of them? So figuring that out gives you a better insight into what Google's looking at than trying to figure out, if having multiple images on a page is a ranking factor. We're trying to look
Mm-hmm.
at how they're crawling, those sort of fundamental things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't, the people that are doing that right now don't reveal that because they don't want people mucking with it.
I understand.
Until we figure those things out, it's not there. But other things that I test, I share with my tested SEO from my mastermind group, and things like that. Some of that stuff gets out in there as well.
Uh-huh. So
So I'm working on Fight Club.
Uh-huh. So can you talk now a little bit about your tested SEO training, your tested SEO mastermind? Because I got there for the first time. I think it was in May 2023. So I can say if I look at my SEO experience the way you look at yours, I can say that I only have like half half a year of experience in SEO, even though I was there since 2012 or something like that. So can you talk a little bit about what you do there? And is it what you do now for living, like mostly like testing and doing tested SEO trainings?
No, the training is part of what I did. That stemmed out of just frustration with doing that. It was a temporary thing, and I'll run it, 2 maybe 3 times a year until I get tired of it. It's not the primary thing that we
Mm-hmm.
do, but it, there was a Fight Club episode about 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a bunch of testers on. I was one of the testers, and one of the questions that somebody that was watching the show asked was, what percentage of your tests do you publish? And somebody said, 80%. A couple of people said, 50%, and one person said 20%, and I said less than 5%. And people were mad. Not they were mad at me. They were mad that testers wouldn't just give, 100% away to the universe. People don't understand how much time and energy, gets devoted to that. So, for example, I researched CTR for about 6 months. I was doing
Oh,
CTR tests probably 30 to 40 hours a week for six
oh,
months to figure out how it worked. And people are like, well, how does it work? I'm like, I'm not giving that away.
uh-huh.
So the tested SEO training arose out of taking all the stuff that I didn't publish, um, and just putting it into an 8-week training where I basically give people my ranking playbook. This is 95% of what I do. There's still a couple things that I tell people in the training. Some of the things that I do that I don't share, but they're not necessary. I do them rarely. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody like you coming into the training, um, a lot of people will come in following Google's guidelines, not realizing that they're inaccurate and they're not the whole story. And Google's not sitting there waiting for you to go to 2.1% keyword density and then you go to Google jail or something along those lines. And all the stuff that I teach can be done white hat, gray hat, or black hat. It just depends on your preferences.
Mm-hmm.
So all I care about is what actually works and what actually works better. So, some techniques, if I find something that works and can get you ranked in, 6 months, and then I find something that'll get you ranked in 4 months, I still know the 6 month thing works, but I'll use the 4 month thing. And then if I find something that works in 2 months, I'll use the 2 month thing. And that's what we, share, sort of the refined version. And after people come through the training, there's a mastermind on the back end where people share, they've taken what I've done and expanded upon it and done their other things and are bringing their own expertise into that. We have somebody showing up today that's showing their index, their audit, their site audit
Yeah.
stuff, on a mastermind call today. So, people share their expertise, and the community benefits from it. So, um,
Yeah.
it's a great little community. I'm very, very happy with it because I learn stuff from the people that come through. When you
Mm-hmm.
start to get, talented SEOs that can see and speak a common language, there's magic in that.
Mm-hmm. And how many people are there now in your community?
There's 60 something
Uh-huh.
in the mastermind
Oh,
right now.
60 advanced SEOs. Yeah, nice. And can everyone join Tested SEO training?
No, you have to apply. If you go to testedseotraining.com and look to see if it's right for you, you can understand a little bit about the program and stuff like that, and you reach out to me, and I will schedule a time to basically interview you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's a good fit there, you'll be offered an opportunity to come in. Not everybody makes it in. It's definitely not for new people. It's not for people that are like course jumpers, for example. People that just like to go. It's a boot camp.
Yeah.
You're implementing week by week, and we're sharing results and things like that. So it's a commitment, and it works better if you already have a solid foundation in SEO, even if it's incorrect, even if you're leaning towards all the white hat stuff. If you're open to looking at data, that we show and data on your own sites and testing a few things a little differently, then you'll do well.
Yeah, because this is kind of what I came with. I had some experience, a lot of experience. I was doing the SEO, the whitehead way. I basically knew the SEO documentation by Google like by heart. And I knew the fundamentals, how like what you should do to optimize the page, and it usually worked. But in the cases where it stopped working or it
Yeah.
didn't, or it kind of didn't bring the results I expected, I got stuck a little bit. What I do next? And now I have like a pool of possibilities. Maybe this, maybe that, and factor diversity, something you mentioned earlier. This is huge. Can you talk about factor diversity a little bit more? Because this was a game changer for me as well.
Factor diversity basically means, if you think about Google as a scoring algorithm, it's got to crawl your page and it's got to figure out things about your page. Do you have these terms? Do you have these things? And it converts all of that data into a score. So it just says,
Mm-hmm.
is Olga's page better than Lee's page? That's, ultimately what this comes down to. And so because you always hear this, the standard there's 200 ranking factors, whatever. There may be thousands of ranking factors, I think was the last thing that Google had said, but let's say there's 200 ranking factors. Well, you can get score by having different amounts of some of those 200. You don't have to have all 200 of those, but the more factors you have, the better you'll typically score, especially if you have the stronger factors. More of the stronger factors is even better and more efficient. So what we figured out over time was that element there is itself, predictive. The number of factors that you utilize is very predictive of your rank position. We also know on the other side of it, there's an algorithm that's a spam algorithm called MC4. And we don't know that Google has exactly this, or it's implemented in exactly this way. But the way that MC4 works is it tries to find if your score is primarily made up of one factor or a minimum number of factors. What it does is says, now you're trying to exploit the system, so we'll ignore you. We've all seen this. You go build, 50 links to your page and it goes up higher. And then you build 500 and it goes up higher. Then 5,000, it goes up higher. And then you build 50,000 and it tanks. At that particular point, Google understands that the only thing that you have going for you is number of backlinks. And then you get up to where that is just such a dominant amount of your score, it just says, hey, we're not going to give you credit for backlinks. But if you have more factors, if it's not just that one, if you're utilizing a lot of different factors, then it continues to, backlinks continue to work and other factors continue to work. So, factor diversity is just something that we preach all the time. Just make sure that you're well diversified and you're not a one-trick pony. And the thing that Ted has been sharing a lot lately is if your site moves during an update up or down, you're missing something.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it moves up, you just happen to have something right now that's in favor in the algorithm, and when it gets dialed down, the weight of that, you'll drop back down again, which means that you're missing some other pieces. Otherwise, you would stay up and not move very much at all. So that's factor diversity in a nutshell.
Yeah, this is super, super interesting. And can you talk a little bit about Google Core updates? Updates, like how do you approach them? How do you analyze websites? Like, is it only about factor diversity? Like, because I know you and Ted, you share things about Google Core updates that are kind of contrary to what most people believe and say. Like, can you share some of that?
Well, I would say that the way that I think about core updates is Google's trying to figure out what factors give them the best signal. And so at times they might think, oh, you know what? Schema is giving us a little better signal, so we'll weight schema a little higher. Exact match is, being overused, so we'll weight that one a little lower. Backlinks, we'll weight that a little higher. And so they're just adjusting the knobs on, the big factor families that they have. And so it rescores things and moves people up and down. But the better SEOs, the ones that have factor diversity, they'll have all of those factors present on their page. So they don't care that you give me more credit for this thing that I have and less credit for that thing that I have. I still have enough factors and points to rank well. Mm-hmm. So the better SEOs that I know, we don't notice that there's a Google update except for the chatter in the SEO groups. Oh my God, there's an update. Oh my God, my site got hit. That's what we notice. Our own sites don't really move, much, if at all, during an update, because if you have all the factors, you don't care which ones, they give you credit for. So if somebody says that their site has been hit during an update, we'll just run a Cora report and try to see if they have, a glaring deficit in some factor category that's, ranking well. So for example, if Google, at times historically, schema has been an extraordinarily powerful factor. If you don't have it, you got problems. It's not that way today, but if you've got that, there are times when exact match is very, very important. So if you don't have it, you'll drop. If you add it to your page, you rise right back up to where you were before. So all we're looking at is just, if you've bounced up or down, it's why. What is the difference now in, what Google is weighting versus what it was, prior to the update? Most of the time we find that it's not really the update that hits people's stuff. It's their own, it's technical issues or other little things. I had in August, I was at a conference, Digital Unfiltered, and one of the participants there asked the panel of speakers, you know, we just had an update, my site got hit, what would you do? And most people focused on, how to recover from an update. And my question to him is, what makes you think it was the update that hit your site? There's a lot of factors. Did it hit all pages or just some pages? Did it hit on the update or immediately before or after? There's more details there. A couple of weeks later, he reached out to me and he goes, thanks for that. I went and looked, and it wasn't all pages on my site. It was just some pages. And on some of those pages that got hit, there was a PHP script that broke. And he said, we fixed the script and all the pages recovered. So we find that's kind of the thing. Most of the time it's something other than the update, but everybody likes to say, hey, the update happened, my site tanked, therefore. And sometimes it's that, but a lot of times it has nothing to do with the update. It could be, you lost links, some negative thing happened, you changed the plugin and it broke your sitemap, whatever.
Yeah, cool. And if someone wants to start testing, like how do they go about it? Do they buy a new website, a clean website? Can they test on a live site they already have? Like what would you recommend?
So if we were the strict laboratory testing, you set up just clean websites and you create these, fake pages and so forth. There's a lot of value in that. And, if people want to start with that just to get their feet wet, you can do it. But another way you can do it is on live pages. Now, either way, you have to do it a lot of times. So if I told you that, having the word purple in your H1 was a ranking factor, an easy thing to do would be to go to your website. Your website's got a bunch of pages. Take, 10 of them and, don't do anything with them. Just kind of set them off to the sides, and you got 10 of them that you go change the H1 to include the word purple. And then you just watch what happens to the rankings, to the impressions, to, traffic, to clicks, all those sort of things. And you can see for yourself, yeah, it did something, or nah, it didn't do anything. You can, but just make sure you do it enough. Don't do it one time and think that you've discovered something, because there's too much randomness and volatility in the search. You can't do it. So I always encourage people, when you hear these ideas, and whether you like them or don't like them, go try it. Try it on pages, and you can try it on pages that don't rank well. So you're not doing it to your money page, but every site has pages that, don't rank particularly well. So if you're, ranked number 45 and you put purple in your H1 and it shoots up to number 22, it's an indicator. It's not going to make you a lot of money because it's still, further down in the SERPs, but at least you can see. And so we just encourage people to go to that. And if it goes from 45 to 85, you're like, whoops, that's a bad thing. Go remove purple from the H1 and it'll recover back to its previous position. So
Yeah.
just try, just go and do and see for yourself. You don't need, even when we show people how to test sort of with the classic testing websites only and fake keywords and those sort of things, everybody thinks you need a PhD in statistics or something like that. All you need is the ability to copy paste, put stuff in a rank tracker, see what happens. That's it. It's not, it's not a mystery. It's just work.
And talking about rank trackers and SEO tools, so what is your SEO tool set in addition to Cora?
In addition to Cora, I use Ahrefs a little bit because sometimes I like to just dig into people's backlink profile a little bit. I use Screaming Frog a lot. I use Excel as the primary tool, and I have a couple other tools that are in development. People can look at it. Witcher Labs. I have a little link building tool that builds cloud links for you. And then I've
Can
got,
you talk a little bit about that tool? Like, how does it work? Can
sure.
everyone get it? Is it
Yeah,
like...
if people go to witcherlabs.com, there's a simple link tool. All it requires is for you to set up your cloud accounts and give the tool your credentials. So the really nice thing about this is that you're able to, it's almost like your own private PBN, because they're your cloud properties, your buckets, and anything that I do using the tool to myself, if I, blow it up or, do bad things, it doesn't affect you because you're completely different than I am. So
Yeah.
And what it does is it just, you give it a keyword that you're trying to rank a page for, and it goes and does some research and creates some content, and creates some cloud links, uploads them, and then it sends them to a little crawler so that Google comes and finds
Oh.
your cloud links and stuff like that. So we built it, to do a little simple job like that, and it works well. It's not everything that you need to do in link building, but it's enough to give you some quick little relevant links to your site. And we have other tools in development that help make the SEO process faster. But generally speaking, I don't use a lot of tools. Also, I'm not an agency, so I don't have to have a lot of the reporting tools and client management stuff that's there. But in terms of just pure SEO tools, that's my toolbox.
Hmm. So you want to say that cloud links work? Coming back to that.
I don't. We use cloud links because they're easy to generate and things like that. I don't think that cloud links are better than any other type. I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
preference for type of link. If you've got PBNs, use them. If you want to use Web2s, use them. If you want to use, you know, uh, sort of social media stuff or video or whatever it is, use them. They'll all work. And Google. So I don't sit there and say, cloud links are the magical thing that Google loves. That's not it. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of cloud properties are easier for us to build links on than other platforms. Now we could have done the same thing by buying domains, but it's easier to set up cloud stuff than it is setting up individual domains, because then users and ourselves, we have different, hosting, and that makes posting your links
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah.
So we went with it as an easier. It was an easier
Mm-hmm.
solution.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And for rank tracking, how do you track rankings?
I use SERP Robot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something I've used for a long time, and it does okay. I don't have any love or hate or of
Mm-hmm.
any other tool. It's just I built that when it works for me, and I'm lazy, so I'm not going to shift. Um, that's it.
Okay.
And then occasionally, if I'm looking at local stuff, I also use Local Viking to do
Mm-hmm.
geogrids.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there are other geogrid software that work well out there, so it's not that I've tested and it's better than this one and that one. It's something that I
Yeah.
use, and it gives me
Sure.
the data that I need.
And talking about local SEO, is there some test results, an interesting one or anyone that you can share?
you know the thing about local, I'll share this little tip, because this is where people mess this up. um, a lot of people think, okay, local is all about the GMB or GBP, or people say, no,
Okay.
local is all about the website, or no, it's actually both. Google gets local signals from each of those, and you can rank just using, methods on the GBP. You can rank just by using stuff on the website, and it's better to utilize both of them. But
Mm-hmm.
this dogma about, oh, it's all about this or it's all about that. It's not true. There's multiple ways of doing it, and you just have to understand that those things give different signals. If you're
Hmm.
looking at like a plumber, on the GBP, you can say we have plumbing services, and you can do a few other little things there. But on the website, you can write lots of pages with hundreds and hundreds of words of content that just validates that you're, a plumber, you have expertise in that niche.
Mm-hmm.
And the website's a much better way of, doing that than the GBP ever would be. But the GBP is the one that is in Google's system that says, hey, we're located right here at 123 Main Street. Here's our phone number and our hours of operation. And that's a trusted, geo signal. That's going to be better than anything you could do on a website. But other things can be done in either place, and you can rank well.
Yeah, yeah. This is very insightful. I also learned a lot about local SEO during tested SEO training, so my perspective also changed a lot after doing some of those things. Uh, and coming back to tests, what are some things we shouldn't do? Things that can easily mess up a test for newbies.
doing it once, or
Uh-huh.
doing multiple things. Like I'll see people and they'll do these case studies. Hey, we did this thing for helpful content and our site and our client site shot up. And I'm like, okay, is that all that you did? No, we also built some links. We also fixed, some technical issues. And I'm like, well, you can't just pick, the one thing that you like. Just do one thing if you're going to do it, and do it multiple times. So I know if I go test, do a certain type of backlink boost local rankings, I'll go do it on 10 sites or more and see, knowing that just randomly, if I do nothing to 10 sites, one of them is going to shoot way up, one of them is going to shoot way down, and the other 8 aren't going to move very much. They'll move, plus or minus over a period of weeks, 1 to 3 positions. So what I'm looking for is, do I get a whole bunch of websites to move more than 1 to 3 positions?
Mm-hmm.
So if I get 6 of the 10 websites move up, 8, 10 positions, I know that what I did worked, because I have, just a lot of data, and we'll go and repeat it and, do it on other live sites and things like that to continue to get those results. But that's most of what I see is people will work really, really hard and they'll set something up and do it only once. And, you might as well do nothing at that point, because whatever you get
Uh-huh.
is going to be just random.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I have to ask you about that. Everyone in the SEO in the industry is now a little bit scared about the future AI. I watched your presentation on
Mhm.
SEO Rockstars. You talked about that, and I really, really liked that presentation. Can you share your kind of take on AI changing, taking away our jobs?
Well, I think that we saw back, I think it was April or May, a guy developed a really, really clever app. And you had a little earpiece in your ear, and it was designed,
Uh-huh.
it trained it on law to help you fight traffic tickets. So you would go into court, this little device would be in your ear, and it would listen to what the judge was saying, what the prosecutor was saying, and it would tell you what to say, the applicable law that would be, counter to
Oh.
that. So it's basically like having a lawyer in your ear, but it was AI driven. And the legal industry came after the guy. They said, you're practicing law without a license. And he goes, yeah, but it's just software. It's not us. But because in the US, practicing law without a license is a felony in most places, he backed down and, pulled it.
Uh-huh.
Now, whether he pulled it or not, the ability to research a topic like traffic law and real time almost have a lawyer in your ear is phenomenal. And so you look at a lot of knowledge work like law, case law and the statutes are online. You can train AI on this, and AI can understand and make connections within that faster than a human can. And then it can replace probably 80% of what lawyers do or more. The same thing is true of any sort of knowledge work. We've had a friend of ours, fed a bot that he created. He fed it the U.S. tax code, a couple of hours, and it understands the tax code. Most tax accountants don't understand the tax code. So, and there's still problems, things still hallucinate, they misunderstand, these large language models are still in development. But if you look at what was available in February of this year and what's available in December of this year, it's night and day how much it's come, and it's going to continue to accelerate. I was looking at the launch video for Gemini, Google's new AI thing. And while there's some questions about it and things like that, the fact that it's multimodal and it can respond in so many different things means that it can learn and comprehend and do things faster than we can. So my take is that knowledge-based work like SEO, there will be models that are developed to do those things within the next 3 years. And at
Mm-hmm.
first they'll be clunky and bad, but if you have something that can, for example, an AI that can run a site audit and identify that you have a problem with some 404 pages, and it can tell you that you need to, 301, this, that, or the other, and your title tag needs this, and your content needs to be expanded. Here's some suggestions for expansion of that content. What do you need you and me for? That's kind of the where it is. It's going to become a commodity. And so I think knowledge workers, unless you are the top of your industry, you're at risk. And
Mm-hmm.
so right now we're looking at um, other income streams that don't depend on that particular thing. If I was an agency owner right now, I would be worried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I thought maybe you will say something more positive.
well, the positive thing is we know, because we've
Yeah,
seen the talk that I gave just looked at technological disruptions over time. They
yeah,
follow a very predictable pattern, just like this one is. Things are going to change. Do I know exactly how they're going to change? No, but I know what I'm looking at. We saw. I was laughing. Yesterday or day before yesterday, OpenAI made a partnership with a German firm that's a news firm that owns lots of news outlets. That's how they're going to get their real-time data. Whereas
mm-hmm.
Elon Musk's um, was trying to get his stuff, out of Twitter, which is a huge, real-time thing, and it's an advantage, but they just negated that advantage for them, and they actually have now more and better data than he does, which puts his AI at risk. You see Google coming out and saying, hey, this is our Gemini, and it beats ChatGPT 4 now. And then Microsoft says, hey, if we got these new prompts and stuff like that,
Yeah,
we beat Gemini. It's like everybody's jockeying for these things, and you're just watching the way it's playing out. So is everybody is the market gonna adopt all this? I don't know. We can have two guys in a garage right now inventing something that we don't know about coming out, but we have time. So
yeah,
if we see that ultimately this is going to be a problem, you know, where isn't it going to be a problem? And you can start to make that move now. Not that you just jump ship and scream, "Oh my God, the world is ending," but look at other opportunities. So, and they're
yeah,
always out there. People are always going to need help with certain types of problems, and there are certain things that AI is not good at, and it's going to be a challenge for it to get good at. And those are opportunities for us. Typically, SEOs, the good ones, are good problem solvers.
yeah,
Others just want to tell me how to do it, tell me what tool to use, and they're just basically little executors, and those are the ones that are most at risk. So
yeah,
I look at it as a very positive thing. The world is going to change. It's going to change in some positive ways and some negative ways, and if you just keep your eyes open,
yeah,
you can take advantage of that.
yeah. I like the sound of it. Okay, Lee, so where can people find you, connect you? Where are you active? Like, what's the best place?
Best place to find me is, SEO Fight Club. You'll see, anything that we talk about, because that's weekly. Other than that, I don't publish a lot of stuff. I'm not out there. I mean, if a few SEO groups. If people want to reach me, they can find me on Skype. My Skype handle's Test It All. It has been for, well, since Skype came out. That was the one that I picked years ago, because that's all that I do was testing,
Uh-huh.
even back then. So everybody thinks that's a new thing. I'm like, no, that's been before I even started testing in SEO. I had that handle. Um, and Witcher Labs, you can see some of the stuff that's in development, because we've got things that are coming in the now and in the next few months that are in development that'll be out there, so people can see what we're up to.
Okay, cool. And I hope to get Honey, your wife, on the show soon. I hope she agrees to be my guest as
She'll
well.
agree. She'll love to come on and hang out with you.
Okay, okay, cool. So Lee, thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing everything. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.